Earlier this year, I completed my first year on Airbnb as a host, and I wanted to talk through all the things that I learned through the process. I feel like there wasn't a lot of videos really being transparent about the realities of Airbnb, so that's something that I really want to talk through, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And at the end, we can break down exactly how much I made in my first year. So to begin with, I think it would be a mistake not to mention this right away, but the laws surrounding Airbnb are so important now. There are so many cities, counties that have laws that are banning or restricting Airbnbs. Let's just look at New York, for example, that announced an outright ban of Airbnbs. So if you're planning on buying a property specifically for short-term rentals, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, or another short-term site, you need to make sure that you're super aware of the laws that are existing and laws that might be about to be passed in your area. What happened with me is that I was buying my house. I wanted a duplex so that I could live in one side and rent out the other as an Airbnb, which is a form of house hacking. If you're curious about house hacking, I do have other videos. I'll link them in the description. But that was essentially my idea, is to help lower my living costs by renting out the other side, building equity, la la la. So the largest city that I live in just has a requirement that if you are having an Airbnb, they limit the amount that you can have. I think it's 2 per owner, but they also want to make sure that you're residing in the same residence or in the same city. So for me, that wasn't a big deal because that's what I was going to do. However, the house that I did end up buying is in its own city municipal, and I didn't find out until after I bought the home that that smaller city actually had even more regulations. So they actually have a cap of 100 short-term rental permits for the area. Thankfully, as I was going through remodeling and buying furniture, I went to apply and I was able to get a permit, but that would have been a huge mistake on my side for not doing the proper research beforehand. Thankfully, it all worked out, but that is really one of the biggest roadblocks nowadays and something you have to be super careful of, because I think moving forward, we're only going to see more and more restrictions and regulations. So make sure that the house that you're buying or planning on using does have Airbnb short-term rental laws that benefit you. Another big thing that I didn't really understand, and it's hard to know until you go into the process, is how competitive the market really is, especially in 2023 and especially for the area that I live in. So obviously there wasn't a whole lot I can do if you're watching or learning about it on YouTube. You have to really find people who are going through the experience in the area that you want to have your short-term rental or Airbnb, but it's extremely competitive. The nice thing is I always had a plan to help my Airbnb stand out. I spent a lot of time and resources on the decor. I have a lot of videos of the remodel process and the furniture I picked out, again, all on my page. But I really do think doing all of that really helped set me apart from day one. When you are a new listing, Airbnb does push you out a little bit more to help you get reviews, so you are higher in the search rankings. You basically have a badge that says new, since you don't have any reviews yet. But I think a lot of people clicked into mine because the pictures were so nice. The furniture and the professional photography did help me stand out and get a lot of bookings right off the bat. So even once I started getting reviews, and they were 5-star reviews that kept kept myself high in the search rankings, those pictures really did help me stand apart from the competition. So having a strategy of how you're going to stand apart from the competition, especially in the direct area where you're at, is super important. Airbnb has tools that you can look at other listings that are similar to yours. I think AirDNA also has some free tools. There's a lot of tools out there, some you pay for, some are free, but also that's something to look into, is the landscape that you're going to be launching your Airbnb in and how competitive it's going to be. Pricing is another big thing that I think it's hard to gauge until you launch. You can do the way that you can look for other Airbnbs and similar listings that I was just talking about. You can also do that to check their nightly rates. Airbnb also has some built-in tools. One is called the Smart Pricing tool, but a lot of forums and research that I did going into it said that Smart Pricing does usually set your price lower than you can actually rent it out for. So from the beginning, I turned smart pricing off. I set a custom weekend rate because people are more likely to book on the weekends. And then I had a during the week rate. And I kind of manage that just depending on seasonality, holiday weekends. So I do my pricing manual, and I believe my price is at a good spot. Most months, my first Airbnb is pretty booked out. I will look at the competition and there's other places that are unbooked while mine is booked. So I think I've kind of hit the sweet spot of pricing and the look and feel of the Airbnb. So those two things together have worked out. If you've been following my journey, you know that I've recently moved out and launched the other side as an Airbnb as well. Launching in 2024 definitely came with more challenges than launching in 2023. So I'm still trying to figure out pricing there. The listing is newer, so I'm trying to build up my reviews before I raise that price to be similar to the other side. So right now I'm really just trying to get people into the Airbnb, and I'm dabbling with smart pricing there. We're also now in the fall, so travel is winding down and probably won't pick up again for a couple months. So for me, getting people into the Airbnb is super important so that I can get those reviews and I can get myself up in the search listing. Speaking of that, when it comes to ratings and reviews, it is a complete bloodbath. I'm not exaggerating. Reviews are so important. For my first Airbnb, I had like 25-star reviews, received a 4-star. Basically, she said that one of the outlets, electrical outlets, was inconvenient for her for charging. She gave me a 4-star for that, which was unfortunate. But because I already had about 25-star reviews, it really didn't do much to hurt my listing. You also have tools within Airbnb to basically see your search volume. So if you see a complete decline in search volume, that means that Airbnb probably has you a lot lower on the list when search results come up. And since then I've gotten a couple other 4-star reviews, usually for minor things like that, which is frustrating. I think there's a disconnect of what guests think is a 4-star experience and what, you know, as a host, I would like to think is a 4 or 5-star experience. I believe if you're saying that you loved it and you would come back anytime, that should be a 5-star, but again, I am a little biased. Just knowing that Airbnb really does take those 4 stars and it can make a big impact of where you show up in search. My second Airbnb, I'll keep comparing the two because I think it's a good comparison. Second Airbnb, my third review was a 4-star. So when you take 3 reviews and one's a 4-star, what does that come out to? Like a 4.65, a 4.7? And no one is booking 4.7s, unfortunately. Like, especially in a more competitive area. And I watched as my views and impressions just absolutely tanked after that 4-star. Thankfully, I did have some bookings already lined up as this was ramping up earlier this year. But it's been really hard to come back from that. It's been like an uphill battle fighting back those 4-star reviews. And I've gotten 2 on that side and not a lot of traffic of 5 stars to basically buffer that. So I'm continuously fighting an uphill battle. And I've just noticed my bookings has decreased dramatically just from having a couple 4-star reviews. So again, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect, and I don't think, obviously guests don't know how much it impacts your search, so you can manage it. However, I've seen hosts basically after you check out, they kind of send you a check-out message, say thank you for staying. If you enjoyed your stay, would love if you leave a 5-star review. Some people say that's too forward, so some guests don't say anything at all. I've only started sending messages, and that's only for the side that I would like a little bit more for 5-star reviews. And even then, I will really only pick people that felt like they sent me a lot of really kind messages about how much they enjoyed their stay. And then I'll ask them to leave a 5-star review and basically say, you know, leaving a 5-star review does help my business. And I kind of leave it at that. But there is a line for sure of like, how much is it feeling like you're begging or making a more uncomfortable experience for the guest? So that's something I've been battling with. The other side, really, I don't need to say anything. I send the check-out message, thank them for their stay, and then they can choose to leave a review or not. But yeah, so yeah, it can be kind of handled 2 ways. Cancellations is another one. I don't battle with cancellations a lot, but I feel like my experience with cancellations has been pretty positive. Airbnb lets you basically pick your cancellation policy, like I think it's flexible, moderate, or strict. I pick moderate because basically the guest is entitled to a full refund up to canceling 5 days in advance. And for me, usually being booked out on weekends and there's a lot of traffic and a decent amount of tourism in my city, is that usually if my place is open, it's usually booked within 2 days of that weekend coming up. So when I have had cancellations, I don't think I've ever had someone not come and stay anyways. So for me, I don't really lose money. There has been a couple times where people will cancel within the window. I think up to 2 days in advance, they get half their refund back, which again, I usually still get booked for that weekend. So it doesn't really affect me too bad. But yeah, so my experience with cancellations has been pretty positive. It just depends on how you want to handle that. And I think it takes some time to sit down and have those experiences to be like, how soon can I get a new guest in? And then kind of figure out your cancellation policy from there. I do think guests are more likely to book if you have if you have the moderate or flexible cancellation policy, because I think strict is like you basically have to cancel within 48 hours, no matter how far out in advance it is. So I think that's sometimes hard for guests. I know for me, I wouldn't book a place like that, especially if I'm already on, like if I'm not fully sure if the trip is happening, and especially if it's like 3 months out, because then I'm frustrated because it's like, why can't I cancel for something I booked a week ago when we're 3 months out, and you will definitely have someone else coming to stay and taking up that reservation that I would have taken. So I see it from both sides as a host and a guest, but I definitely think moderate or flexible is the best way to go. Guest communications is another one that's super important, and how they're planning on booking. Having some level of customer service and sales skills, I think definitely does lead to a little bit more bookings. I am very responsive. I respond within the hour, if not immediately. So if I have instant book off, which is another feature that Airbnb has, so that guests can book right away. I have that turned off and I have it as a request. So the thing is, I get back to requests very quickly. And then you can also send an inquiry. So a guest can send a request to book, which I can accept, or they can send an inquiry, which is just basically asking for more information. So that's usually where they're asking, like, how far is it from this attraction? Do you have such and such, like, I don't know, like an EV charger? What's the parking situation like? So me having a very prompt, and I believe a very professional response has converted to sales. I say sales like bookings. There has been people who are kind of on the fence of the property, and I've been able to, I think charm them, convince them to book, and then they have a great experience. So that's been nice. I think people who like hosts who take a while to respond or don't have that very welcoming professional nature in the way that they talk to guests, it might deter some guests from booking. So that is super important. And then like post-checkout guest communications, there are so many people, I wouldn't have expected this, there's so many people that leave valuable things behind, or just things behind in general. I've had full wallets left behind with cash in them, things that they purchased, like brand new clothes, shoes that they purchased while they were there or just brought with them. I've had someone literally leave their super expensive speaker. People leave behind all sorts of food. They'll like buy a brand new, like, I don't know, a bulk set of like Keurig cups that are like 36, and they use like 2 and then they just leave the rest behind. It's just crazy some of the things that people leave behind. Maybe that's not crazy to you, but you have to also be careful of how you manage that stuff. If they reach out or you reach out to them to say, would you like this to be returned? You can charge them, like basically my cleaning lady has to send it out. So I charge her, I charge them for her time, as well as obviously the shipping costs. The shipping costs you can pass on to them. That doesn't have to come out of your pocket. But each state and city has regulations on how you deal with lost items. We're basically held to the same standards as like a hotel. So you have to store that stuff in a secure area, because I don't know if there's a certain amount of time, maybe it's like 3 to 6 months. I think everywhere is very different, but you can't dispose of it until you've basically put in a proper effort to return those items to the guests. And again, you can charge them for the time it takes you to return those items, but you have to make like an effort essentially. If not, they can it technically can become a legal situation. They can sue you if they check out, you throw away something valuable, they reach out a couple days later to get it back and you say it's gone, like you are actually on the hook for that. So that's also something important that I did not know about. I had to really do some research. Again, like I literally had a lady leave her whole wallet behind, credit card, cash in it, didn't reach out till a week later. I got back to her and was like, do you need this shipped? Didn't hear from her again for like a month, and then she decided she wanted it shipped out. So like, thank God I didn't throw it out, because I would have been on the hook for that if she decided to take like legal action against me. So I was very surprised that I heard from her. Like it took them so long, like 6 weeks to get back to me. But that's why it's important to keep that stuff stored. Usually, I mean, I don't even know if I can't even give advice on the best time to throw things out, because it just differs so much for each area. I think Georgia has a law, which is where my Airbnb is, that you have to provide it over to some third party. I forget the name of the service or the place, but it's like a place for like lost and found property essentially. So yeah, that's something crazy that I had no idea about until I started actually being a host. Okay, so for the money, like I talked about, it's a little weird because from April 2023 to January 2024, I just had the one side on Airbnb. January through April 2024, I had my side on and off intermittently. I started traveling and working remotely abroad, so I would kind of come and go. So while I was gone, I would put my house on Airbnb before I decided to move out of Georgia more permanently. That came earlier this year. So from April 2023 to April 2024, I'll pull up the numbers, I made $33,543 in my first year. And this is total sales coming in from Airbnb, so even guests paying for the cleaning fees, that again, I pass directly on to the cleaner the day that she does the clean. So that includes everything. That's how Airbnb does their payouts. I do have the home listed on Peerspace and VRBO, but honestly, there's like no traction for me on those sites. I know some people have a lot of luck with VRBO and get more listings on VRBO, but I don't know what it is. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know why, but it doesn't really get booked on VRBO. I think I had one inquiry on VRBO for the year and a half that my Airbnb has been live now, and she didn't even end up booking. So yeah. So from that $33,000, I then obviously have to pay out all the expenses, the mortgage, the full mortgage now that I'm not living there. Before it was really only half the mortgage, and all utilities, the landscaper that I use I say landscaper, people that come and just mow my lawn, take care of the leaves and stuff like that. And then all the other expenses that come with the house. So that is what we're currently doing the last few months. The Airbnb's kind of been on its own, paying for itself, which has been nice. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful to break down and be super transparent about a lot of things that you can face as a host. I think I'm at like 60 reviews now. I think I have a 4.9. I'm still a Superhost, and that basically gets renewed like every quarter. They evaluate you every 3 months to make sure that you've hit all these criteria and you get Superhost. So after a year and a half, I'm still a Superhost, which is a good sign. But yeah, so that is how everything's going. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. But yes, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys soon.